song you're hearing is called the Foggy Dew. Before Conor McGregor made it his UFC Walkout song, much of the world had never heard it. In fact, if you want to find out the dates of Conor's fights without looking at his record, just look at the search trends for Foggy Dew. Despite the boosts in popularity he brings, many people have no idea what the song is actually about. It's the Chieftains and Sinead O'Connor's 1995 version of the Foggy Dew. It's one of hundreds of renditions since the song was first penned around 1919 by canon Charles O'Neill. The song drops us in 1916. It's a still morning during the week of Easter as O'Neill rides through a valley toward a city. British soldiers march by him as he reaches his destination. But the sounds of war belong to yesterday. Now only a church bell's call to solemn prayer echoes through the still fog over Dublin's River Liffey. Dublin is in ruins. The scene O'Neill has stumbled upon can't be properly understood without a basic understanding of British involvement in Ireland. In the early Middle Ages, Ireland's native Gaelic and Catholic culture belonged to the clans and kingdoms that ruled over its green country. In 1196, Henry II of England led an invasion and took control of much of Ireland. Centuries passed, and despite the English crown's efforts to control its territory in Ireland by outlawing marriage between English settlers and Irish natives and forbidding them from speaking Irish, the indigenous Gaelic kingdoms held strong and regained much of their land. In the 1540s, Henry VIII attempted to reassert English control, invading Ireland and forcing the new Protestant Anglican religion on its people. Kingdoms fell in the decades of bloody conquest, until the last stronghold of Irish power resided in the northern region of Ulster. The rural chiefs fought back in the 9 Years' War, but were ultimately crushed. Native rulers fled and the English seized their land, systematically colonizing the Gaelic Catholic Ulster with thousands of only English-speaking Protestant settlers. The indigenous Gaelic system, with its laws, lordships, and customs, was dead. Ireland was now a part of the British Empire. The Irish would continue to fight for control of their ancestral lands, and Catholic-Protestant conflict fueled this. Irish and Old English Catholics in Ireland attempted to overthrow the local Protestant English government in 1641, but within a decade Oliver Cromwell stamped out the ethnic conflict, massacring cities, forcing entire towns from their homes and farms, and shipping tens of thousands of men, women, and children to work on plantations in Barbados as indentured servants. Over a quarter of Ireland's people died in the warfare and resulting famines. Cromwell then banned the public practice of Catholicism and confiscated all Catholic-owned land to be sold to British settlers. The powerful land-owning class of Ireland became almost exclusively British or Anglo-Irish and Protestant, while the majority Catholic population was prohibited from even having a seat in their own parliament. In the 1840s, a blight struck Irish potatoes, the staple crop of Ireland's peasants. In response, the British Sir Charles Trevelyan claimed the potato famine was a gift from God to punish the miserable Irish people. He was the officer in charge of distributing famine aid. He cut food programs and 1 million starved to death. But Ireland as a whole wasn't low on food. The Irish furiously watched as wealthy landowners continued to harvest and export boats loaded full of grains and oats to England and elsewhere. It was in the early 1900s that Irish politicians successfully pushed for more independence. In 1912, the UK Parliament passed the Home Rule Bill, which would give Ireland the right to govern its own internal affairs. Great Britain would still control matters of defense and foreign policy. Also, the counties of the still largely Protestant Ulster would temporarily remain part of the UK. Still, Home Rule was the closest thing to independence the Irish had had in a very long time. Except just as Home Rule was being enacted in 1914, World War I broke out. And Great Britain suspended home rule until after the war. The British declared war on Germany as the Germans tore through the small neutral nation of Belgium. The British encouraged the Irish to join their ranks, and many did. Most members of the pro-home rule paramilitary group, the Irish Volunteers, decided to fight, but around 13,000 of them stayed back, more skeptical of the war. Canon Charles O'Neill seems to be on the same page as them. In verse 3 of the Foggy Dew, he notes the irony in England asking Ireland to fight for the freedom of small nations like Belgium, while simultaneously withholding self-government from Ireland. Within the ranks of the Irish Volunteers, there lurked a more ambitious influence that saw Britain's involvement in World War I as an opportunity. The Irish Republican Brotherhood, led by Tom Clark and Sean McDermott, influenced the leadership of the Volunteers and created a secret military council of 7 members, including Patrick Pearse, a teacher and activist devoted to reviving the native Gaelic culture. The council didn't want home rule, it wanted true independence. Like their ancestors in centuries past, they're going to stage a rebellion, and they're going to use the Irish Volunteers to do it. The council organizes Irish volunteer military parades across Ireland for the week of Easter, but the parades are a cover-up. At 10 a.m. on Monday, 1,300 armed volunteers assemble at points throughout Dublin. Their battalions move in on strategic buildings and take the General Post Office as their new headquarters. There, they barricade the doors with furniture, mailbags, whatever they can find. As fighting erupts in the streets of Dublin, Patrick Pearse emerges from the GPO and proclaims the establishment of the Irish Republic, declaring the right of the people of Ireland to the ownership of Ireland. Pearse is to be the president of the provisional government. The Irish Volunteers then raised the flag of war over the GPO. It would become the national flag of Ireland we know today. To O'Neill, this is the noble war the Irish should be fighting. Dying here means more than being killed in World War I storming Ottoman beaches at Suvla or Sud Bar. Though the Volunteers are joined by other pro-Irish groups in the rebellion, in the coming days British reinforcements arrive, and their strength increases from 400 men to 20,000. Here O'Neill again draws a parallel between the Irish situation and Belgium's, using Huns, the term British propaganda used for the Germans, to refer to the British troops. By Thursday, British artillery is smashing the rebels and the city is in flames. Fires break out in the GPO. As the rebel forces abandon their positions, they're picked off in the streets by British soldiers. By Saturday, the rebels surrender. O'Neill believes their loss was not in vain, and still maintains the men who fought alongside Patrick Pearse and the revolutionaries will be honored as martyrs. The British hastily execute Pearse and all of the military council without giving them fair trials. They then arrest and intern over 1,000 civilians, many of whom had nothing to do with the rebellion. It was these actions and the heavy civilian casualties of the Easter Rising that convinced much of the Irish population that the rebel cause was righteous. A clean separation from Great Britain was necessary. As O'Neill rides out of Dublin, he has no way of knowing that the vanquished Easter Rising has just placed Ireland on a decades-long bloody road to independence. For now, he simply prays for the fallen Irish, taking some solace in the fact that in death, they are finally free.
When you fell in the foggy dew.
Hey, if you like this video, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, and also consider donating to our Patreon account.